Hi and welcome to Miss Muses. For this week's video, we decided to do a quarantine favorites to highlight some of our favorite things and as a way to show more about us and to share how we've been coping with 2020.
Okay, so our favorites are going to be split in 6 categories. The first one is book, music, TV show, beauty, food, and stress reliever. Okay, so my first favorite for books is The Best of Me by Nicholas Sparks. And I've actually read most of Nicholas Sparks' novels because as a teenager, his movies got made into movies a lot, so that was really exciting. But I think this is my favorite by far. Maybe it's because I'm older now and this is more from like the adult perspective. It's not really about teenage love. You have the 2 main characters, Dawson and Amanda. They fell in love in high school, and you do get to read about some memories from their teenage years, but it's mostly about their life now as 40-something-year-olds. Dawson is the male character. He was seen as the bad and poor guy in the town, and Amanda, she was the privileged and rich girl who was expected to go to college type of girl. And I'm not going to say what happened between them, but one of them walked away from the other one because they loved that other person so much. I'll just say that. They both have lived pretty tragic lives in their time apart, and then they come back together and meet in their 40s by accident actually, and just a lot of feelings. It's so intense. The way it's written is really beautiful and it's very detailed that it makes you jump into both of their positions. It's a lot of thinking about what could have been and what could be, like how they could possibly make it work now, because it's more complicated than it sounds. I haven't finished, so I don't know what happens, but so far I'm really enjoying it, and it's just a book that makes you think about your own life, both romantically and not romantically, but it makes you think about like when you feel a special energy about something or someone, you should really act on it and you shouldn't let it go, because there are some signs of the universe where you should follow your gut and your heart and just go with it because you don't want to live with regret later. That sounds really like cliche, but I feel like this movie makes you think a lot about your own life as well as their lives, because you don't want to live with regret or anything like that in the future. I kind of played myself and I decided to watch the trailer of The Best of Me because this is one of his novels that got made into a movie, and I don't think your opinion about this story should go based on that movie, whether you saw the movie or you just watched the trailer, because the storyline is not that basic. With the trailer, at least what the trailer shows, it makes it look pretty basic and it misses so many little details and important events that I think are significant to the storyline, and they shouldn't have messed with it. But if you want an somewhat idea of what it's about, you should just watch the trailer. Don't let that be your full opinion on this book, whether you want to read it or not. So The Best of Me is really good. I recommend this book.
I chose Everything is Figureoutable by Mary Forleo. I describe it as an action-forward book. It's not only made to inspire and motivate, but it has activities and practices at the end of each chapter that kind of guide you in through actually putting what she mentions and talks about into action. It sets up the motto in which she lives by and wants you to live by. It basically sets life's problems, our dreams, our failures, and our fears into a positive perspective, and follows the idea that yeah, bad stuff happens, but there's always a way to work it out, a way to make it better, or something to take out of it, to change it. I don't think it's a book you can passively read or listen to. I think it's a book that you should definitely sit down and take time to work through it if you want it to actually work and do what it's meant to do. And although I haven't finished it, I'm really enjoying it so far.
So as for music, I haven't really been listening to new albums during quarantine. I'm kind of actually listening to my childhood songs, a lot of throwbacks, and I have 2 songs for my favorites. These songs I honestly play like on repeat all day, every day, probably for 2 months in a row now. The first one is Into You by Tamia, I believe, featuring Fabulous. I don't know how you pronounce it. Into You, it's just a song about when you're into someone. And it's romantic, and I just think it puts me in a good mood, even though I don't have anyone to dedicate it to. It just makes me happy. Just listen to it like when you're driving or you're just laying down in your bed after a long day, and I feel like it's a feel-good song, and maybe someday you could dedicate it to someone. I don't know. Second song is Differences, and I really don't know how to say this artist's name. I think it's Genuine. I feel like I've heard his name before, but I just forgot how to pronounce it. I hope I said that right. But Differences by Genuine. That song is also super romantic and about how you're into someone. Like his lyrics are, "My whole life has changed since you came in. I knew back then, I knew you were the one." It's like a sweet song to dedicate to someone, letting them know that they were that person for you, like from the start. I think that's a very sweet song. I feel like the music category is really hard to talk about as for favorites, because I want to say why I like that song, but in a way it's also super personal, and you don't like want to put what goes in your head out there for like the internet to hear. But luckily both of the songs that I'm choosing for my favorites are just love songs. I'm not in a romantic relationship or anything where they mean all that much, but they're just songs that you can vibe to, and I think they're worth listening to. But overall, those songs made it to my favorite list because they do remind me of my childhood. I actually need like feel-good songs that bring back good memories, especially during a time like this where there's so many negative and scary things happening in the world. I'm just in a way limiting myself to songs that I already know because I'm not really in the mindset to hear new ones.
So out of all of the horrible things that have come out in 2020, at least I feel as though we've been blessed with great music. And the one I'm specifically going to talk about today, even though there's a lot more, is Hayley Williams' first solo LP, Petals for Armor. The first song that came out was before any stay-at-home orders had begun, and it came at a perfect time for me personally. The album is a full journey from rage and simmer to clarity and crystal clear. It takes you through her emotions as well as giving you something you can definitely truly relate to. I've always been a fan of Paramore, and Hayley's lyrics in this album was no different. If anything, her lyrics in this album felt more vulnerable and more specific, and even, if I can say, clearer to what it is she was trying to say, and resonated even more. It makes light of her faults as well as acknowledging how far she's come and what she's working through and how it's all a process. And in a way, the whole album feels very therapeutic, lyrically and then musically as well. For me, it depicted something personally as to where I'm at and where I would personally like to go through. One of my favorite lyrics is from Roses, Lotus, Violet, Iris, and it's, "I will not be a thorn in my own side, and I will not return to where I once was." That lyric specifically stood out to me because it's something that I've been working through myself, of trying to not be my worst enemy, even though that's what we tend to be to ourselves, and to not go back to the things that I work through already, and to stay on track of moving forward and not regressing. Another one that stood out to me was, "If you know love, you best prepare to grieve. Let it enter your open heart and then prepare to let it leave." Because I've always struggled with that idea of the more you love, the more you have to lose, and how we're supposed to be open to it, and at the same time we leave ourselves open to that vulnerability. But I've also been in search of that vulnerability and taking into account that that is part of life and that I choose that side of life. And another one of my favorite things about the album was also how feminine it feels, how lively, how sad, how melancholic, but also with great dance songs such as Pure Love, Watch Me While I Bloom, and Sugar on the Rim, which are happy, celebrating all the life and joy that can come out of tragedy. So if you haven't listened to it, I obviously recommend. I don't know, I hope you can find something in it that I have found in it.
My pick for my favorites is a Korean drama, and it's called Crash Landing on You. And it's romance, but it's also very suspenseful, and there's mystery to it, there's murder stuff to it, there's like military corruption. I think if you don't really like the romance genre, that there are other things for you to appreciate in the show. It's about a man who's from North Korea and a woman who's from South Korea. The man is very reserved to himself, and he doesn't let himself have happiness, or doesn't think that he deserves to have happiness. And then the woman, she's more bubbly and out there, and she's had tragic things happen in her life as well, where she struggles to let people know who she really is. And so she's also reserved and doesn't really fall for the crap that men say, which she's a boss, by the way. Basically, she accidentally finds her way to North Korea, and there's a bunch of problems that happen as they try to get her safely back to South Korea, and they're just struggling through that, and they're also struggling to get to know each other because they're such like opposites, and they clash a lot, but at the same time you know that they care for each other. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it, because I do think it's really worth watching. Not only them, they're amazing characters, but there's also other characters. So there's like a group of soldiers, and you're going to love them if you watch the show. They're just so loyal, hilarious, cute, and they just do their best to protect the woman from South Korea. But Crash Landing on You is so intense. Like, there's been moments where I'm like crying with a tissue box next to me, screaming at the screen because I don't know what's gonna happen. And then also in the last 3 episodes, I actually got a migraine that didn't go away till the next morning because I was that into the show. I was that stressed out and I was crying so much, and it was just horrible. Like, it was actually physically paining me, but it's just that good, and you get that into the storyline, that into the characters, and you just want to protect them all, like, at all costs.
So I want to talk about The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. It's set in 1950s Manhattan, and it centers on Miriam Maisel, aka Midge. She's a Jewish girl who had all her life planned out. She was married, had 2 kids, living on the Upper West Side, and everything was perfect till her husband leaves her. And then she finds herself on stage in a nightclub, basically turning her tragedies into a comedy. The show follows her and her new manager, Susie, as they try to make it big in the comedy scene. It's a hilarious and fun comedy drama created by Amy Sherman Palladino and I believe as well Dan Palladino. So it's definitely a fast-paced show. I love the aesthetic of it. The costumes are gorgeous, the cinematography is gorgeous. Sometimes it feels like a theatrical play. It's a perfect balance for me, I think, of comedy and feel-good energy and drama as well. It's smart and it's cute. Besides like all the hilarious stand-ups that Midge does, it has some great lines and it has this chaotic energy within the family of Midge and her husband. And my favorite chaotic duo, Midge's parents. So I recommend the show as one to watch, especially if you want to relax. It's not one of those shows that's going to keep you up at night with what you just saw. To me, I found it very relaxing. One, because it's funny, and even though she goes through hard times, it's what comedy does, no? Turn a tragedy into comedy, to turn all like the humiliation, and one of her stand-ups, she mentions how comedy is fueled by oppression and humiliation. It's a perfect way to lean into 2020 with everything that's been going on. I feel like it's a family show as well, even with all the sexual innuendos. There's nothing bad. And I think it's set up perfectly, and I really, really recommend.
So as for beauty, I haven't really added anything new to my makeup collection because I just know what I've had for a long time, and I know how they work, so it's nothing like surprising. But I did change up my skincare routine in the beginning of quarantine. I replaced my cleanser, my moisturizer, and then I added micellar water. But I think the number one thing that I love is this La Roche-Posay gel cleanser. It does a really good job at taking off my makeup, all of it, because my problem beforehand was I would use this Mario Badescu Botanic Gel Cleanser, and that would take off like my face makeup all right, but it didn't take off my mascara, my eye section very well. I used that cleanser for 3 years. I don't know why it took me 3 years to realize that it was crap and it didn't work. So then I used this Honest Beauty Foam Cleanser because I wanted to support Jessica Alba. I love her, and it's a clean beauty brand, but that thing broke me out. Like as I said before, I replaced all my skincare products with new items, and I just had a feeling that the foam cleanser was what was breaking me out. I was breaking out like if I was going through puberty again, like when I was 11 years old. I had little mountains here, and then I also had some around my cheek area and under here. So I stopped using it for 2 weeks, and then my skin went back to normal. And then I remembered that Michelle, she bought me a little sample size of this cleanser in Thailand during Christmas, and I tried that one out, and I just love how it makes my skin feel, and it takes off all my makeup. Like, I don't have any problem areas around my eyes anymore, especially me, who I put on like 3 coats of mascara because my eyelashes are long. So it takes it off well, and it makes my skin feel really soft afterwards, which I also appreciate it, and it just feels clean. But afterwards, I will go in with my micellar water, and then I feel like my skin is good to go and it's clean the next morning. So I think this is really good, and it costs $14 at Target, so it's not too bad because there are some items from this company that run up to $40, I believe. So this is a good price.
In an attempt to explore and basically treat myself, I decided to finally buy a serum. You've probably heard of this serum by The Ordinary. I enjoy skincare more than makeup. It's something that I do to treat myself. Every now and then I like to get a mask or something different and interesting, and I have never gotten a serum before. So I decided to try one that was inexpensive. My skincare has been the same for a long time, and when it varies slightly. I only use micellar water and moisturizer for the day and then night cream for the night. I haven't noticed anything dramatic to my skin. I have noticed minor changes and good changes, especially on the texture of my skin. It feels slightly smoother, especially on the drier portions of my skin, which tend to be my chin and my forehead, and they're smoother and a bit softer. And also I've noticed some of my acne that I get during my period has slightly decreased, which has been a welcome change. I think it's important to treat yourself every now and then, just to kind of, for like a little pick-me-up, to venture into something that you haven't tried before, especially if you're into skincare or into a product. I think it's a good way to treat yourself instead of treating yourself with food, which I also tend to do. But I think skincare, one, adds something to your skin that makes you feel good, so I think that's really important, and it almost feels necessary for a little pick-me-up. So that's just another thing we wanted to add, a little something that we use for beauty, in a sense, taking care of ourselves.
Okay, so for my food favorite, I don't think it's for everyone. It's my tuna recipe. I used to hate tuna when I was little, all the way up until like college. I didn't really like it until I was in Thailand, actually, because my apartment, it just had a refrigerator. For my lunch at school, because I was a teacher, I had to figure out something to eat because the school cafeteria just had a bunch of dishes with meat, and I didn't feel comfortable just picking out like the chicken or the beef. I'm a pescatarian, by the way. So Michelle gave me the idea to start packing tuna because that is something you can make quickly and you can refrigerate it and you don't need like a stovetop to do it. And I don't really remember what vegetables I put in Thailand into my tuna, but here in the beginning of the quarantine is when I really perfected it. It's nothing like groundbreaking. It's about 3 or 4 ingredients: green onion, celery, and cilantro, a little bit of mayonnaise, and like a few squeezes of lemon juice. Just mix it together, and that's so bomb. But you have to eat it cold. Like, I always put my tuna in the refrigerator like at least an hour before I make it. I'll have crackers, and then I'll cut little pieces of avocado and put it on top of them, and then on top of that I'll put the scoops of tuna, and it's just really quick and healthy and delicious. In the clip that you'll see, I'm using bread, but I typically use crackers. I just eat it so much that I ran out of them. But I think it's delicious, and if you try it, you should definitely let me know.
For food, I chose coffee. This isn't always for me. It's part of my morning ritual. It has been for many years. It's accompanied me through long nights as I try to write essays. I'm one of those people that can drink it any time of the day, afternoon, evening, shared, or I sip it alone by myself, with the birds chirping, or in a balcony listening to old songs. I like it black, completely by itself, or creamy and light. For me, coffee is warm and fuzzy and reminds me of home. And yeah, if you can't tell by now, I really love coffee.
For my stress reliever, it is an exercise. It's jump rope. I know that's not for everybody. I feel like everyone I talk to about jump rope with, they hate it, and I don't know why. I've always loved jump rope. I think it's because when I was little, I watched the movie Jump In, and I was so inspired. Like, I would make up imaginary teammates and pretend like I was in a jumping competition. So I fell in love with it then. To me, it's like a hard workout, but then it's not a hard workout because I enjoy it. Every time I go outside to jump rope, I always go out with like a set number that I want to hit that day, and you just put on your music, you're jamming out in place, and you start counting, and it's something that helps you focus and also accomplish. Jump rope has been my go-to because I also want to get better at Muay Thai, and if you have good cardio, you have stronger kicks. That's also something that I'm looking forward to when quarantine ends, to go back to Muay Thai and work out. So just find something that excites you and that you can get better at over time for whatever personal reasons or personal goals that you may have. I think you should have something that, it doesn't even have to be working out, but something that's going to benefit you when this whole COVID thing is over and you can really go and pursue it. So those are my favorites so far in quarantine. By the looks of it, I'm sure we're going to be in quarantine for a little bit longer, and me and Michelle will have time to discover new favorites. So we'll be sure to share that with you in the future.
And lastly, we've come to the stress reliever. For this section, I had a little bit of trouble choosing something that it is that I do to relieve my stress to relax. I wanted to share what we do to wind down, to kind of relax and take a break from the chaos. I began to think of how many times I've heard either in a podcast, a video, a news article talking about different ways to de-stress, to reduce anxiety. I could not help to think that I'm just adding to the noise that's already out there, because I couldn't come up with something really different or really unique to share that it is that I do. I do all the basic things. I exercise, I'll call a friend, or do one of the 4 things or all of the 4 things that I mentioned. Those are all, for me, stress relievers. And sometimes they work perfectly, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes it's hard to find something that actually does, although sometimes it all feels a little bit pointless. I know it's not. This is part of my stress reliever as well, just sharing the fact that we all go through it and finding other people talking about it, knowing that other people are in the same boat, in the same situation, also finding for ways to de-stress, reminds me that we're not alone, not entirely at least. And something about that connection between other people is, I think, something that's important to remember when we are feeling really stressed. Because in the times when we're feeling really stressed or with a lot of anxiety, we tend to feel alone. And I think it's important to remember that we're not. We're in this together. That's my little spiel on stress relieving. Like Mary says, it's all figure-outable. I'll leave y'all with that. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you took something out of it. I hope you learned or heard about a new book or new music that you hadn't heard of before, and that you try it out, and that you have a great day. So we're Miss Muses, and we'll see you in the next one.
Tits up.
Tits up.